pjnet.tv Thursday night, March 26th. It is 9 p.m. on the East Coast. We are ready to bring Dr. Craig von Buseck on board. First, let's go down the checklist. Our bumper's running. We are recording. We are streaming on all platforms. The chat room is waiting. Background is ready. Let's switch to Studio 6 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, good evening. Welcome again back to pjnet.tv. Great to have you. I especially welcome those of you in our live chat room at pjnet.tv. Now, if you are watching this on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and it's live, I would encourage you to take a hop over to pjnet.tv right now, because that's where the people are. Your brothers and sisters in Christ are there right now to welcome you, and you can enjoy some fellowship and actually interact with our live guest. Let's see, behind me is a virus. We are very tired of talking about that. Let's bring on, for the first time on pjnet.tv, Dr. Craig von Buseck. And Craig, I am glad that we're finally able to do this. We had scheduled it some time ago, but I'm told that your car is now fully functional.
Yeah, it only took 5 days, but they got it fixed. But thank you, Coach Mark. It is great to be with you. It's an honor.
Well, we'll see about that, but we are honored that you would take your time to share with us. All of the talk out there right now is about the coronavirus, and I think we would be remiss to just gloss over it and neglect it totally. But what are you seeing out there that the church is doing in response to, or precipitating of, and what do you see us? How do you see us after this subsides?
Well, it's pretty fascinating for me. My dissertation for my doctoral work at Regent University was on effective evangelism and discipleship through the digital world. And that was in 2008. So here we are 12 years later, and we're seeing this amazing situation happen. Really a once in 100 years, maybe once in 500 year type of event. And thank God that we have the digital platforms in order to communicate and to keep life moving forward. And obviously there are a lot of people who have lost their jobs and have been displaced, but there are a whole lot of other people who are continuing to be able to work. They're continuing to be able to gather together for church services. I know for myself, my family, my siblings and I, we gather together once a week on Thursday to pray. And last Thursday we got on Google Groups, and there was all of my siblings, and we were praying together virtually. So this is actually quite an interesting time, and in a way it's an encouraging time for me to see, after these 12 years, how this digital technology is being adopted. We're obviously using it more and more in our personal lives, but now the church is being forced to use it. Mm-hmm. And you and I were talking a little bit earlier, and the question came up as to whether or not this will continue after this crisis is past. And my hope is that it will.
I hope you're right, too. I am glad to see churches, as you said, even though forced, I'll take it. I also see a lot of opportunity for the church to respond to the community, because, there was a day our parents and grandparents grew up when needs came up, whether they be medical, financial, lost your job. People first looked at the family and then looked to the church to meet those needs in the community. If a house burned down, it was the church that rebuilt it, and the neighborhood. People pulled together. That's not the world we live in today, but the church is definitely seeing an opportunity to put itself forward. Are you seeing any of that or hearing any of that?
I am, and it is encouraging to see. It's kind of a mixed bag, because you still have to have the social distancing. Mm-hmm. And so you don't have as much close interaction like you're talking about. But I am seeing it happening digitally. I'm seeing people connecting digitally. And I had mentioned to you earlier, yeah, I work for Inspiration Ministries. I'm the manager of content for inspiration.org. And just spontaneously, our COO said, we need to get onto our social network and just pray for people. And so we started this the beginning of this week without making an announcement. We just went online and started praying, and more than 5,000 people showed up. We were shocked. So the next day it was 6, then the next day 7. Today it was 10,000 people. So we just gathered together for about 30 minutes with 10,000 people from around the world. Trinidad, Tobago, the Philippines. We had people from Nigeria, just all over the world. People were logging on, and of course across the United States. So people are, they're concerned. They're not only concerned about their health, they're also concerned greatly about the economy. And so now is the time for the church to rise up and to share the hope that we have in Jesus Christ.
You know what amazes me, and I love to hear this, because when you look at the metrics as a businessman, I say, okay, you just reached 10,000 people. Now, the budget, I'm not asking you the figures, I kind of know just how cheap that is. Think about the money it takes to build a building and do church in the traditional way and impact 10,000 people. The amount of money that would require is staggering. This is a lean machine economically and very viable.
Yeah, the name of I took my dissertation and I turned it into a book that was published by Broadman and Holman. And the name of the book was called Netcasters, Using the Internet to Make Fishers of Men. Mm-hmm. And the metaphor and the analogy that I used in the book is exactly what you're saying. You could have one guy out on the edge of a dock with a Zebco and a worm on the end of a hook, and that guy might catch a couple of fish and be able to go home and eat. Or you could get yourself a trawler, a fishing vessel that has a fish finder and a huge net behind it, and you could go out to the reef outside of the Atlantic Ocean and put down your net and start trawling and bring in thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of fish. The difference is the technology and the strategy. And the church has missed this when it comes to the digital world. A lot of them are still standing on the edge of the pier with the Zebco and wondering why they're not having a more effective ministry. And the reason is that they're not necessarily up with the times. And I always share the story from Ernest Hemingway, who obviously was one of the great writers of the 20th century, but he was also a great sportsman. He loved to hunt, he loved to fish. And so one time a journalist was asking him a question about his writing. And they said, Mr. Hemingway, what is the secret of the success of your writing? And he used a fishing metaphor. He said, use the bait the fish like to eat, not what the fisherman likes to eat. And that's the mistake that a lot of people in the church have been making. They have been using the bait that they like instead of using the bait that the fish like. And that doesn't mean that you compromise the message, but it does mean that you seek the Holy Spirit for strategy, for effective ministry, to go out to where the fish are, use the bait the fish want, use the fish finder, and then catch hundreds of thousands of fish instead of just a handful.
Well, if I could comment, Craig, your analogy is useful and I like it. But I think we've gone beyond the Zebco at the end of the dock. I think we've put the basket at the end of the dock saying, y'all come.
Exactly right. Jump into the basket, fishy.
Here, fishy, fishy. Come on in. Another one, and I'm going to have to get off this topic, but one of the techniques that I use in dealing with pastors, churches, and church leadership is I say, whatever your annual budget is, okay, now take your average attendance, okay, divide that into your annual budget, and then multiply it by 52. What that would be, sir, is the amount of money you would need to charge for a ticket to attend church if we adopted that model. Now, it's a very unfair comparison because church does more than hold services. I concede that point, but the scale of the monetary scale. I mean, our budget here at pjnet.tv, churches spend more on coffee and donuts. Okay, and when I start looking at some of the metrics, I think this is a very efficient means of sharing the gospel. Let's transition because we don't want to bash the church too much. But anyway, you're on the right track. You have a book. I assume it's published and available. Am I correct?
Which book is this?
The only one I know about, the 400 pages of I Am Cyrus.
Yeah. Yes, I Am Cyrus is available wherever books are sold.
Okay, and I'm putting your website up there just to leave a trail that people can find. Folks, I found this. I have not read any books in over 10 years. And I was a little intimidated, Doctor, when I saw your title. And I thought, I am not familiar with Middle East affairs. And I am going to be matching wits with somebody I am no match for. I better, and you suggested that I just kind of skim a few chapters to get, well, I set out to do just that, but that book is riveting. And I read all 400 plus pages, and I was blown away. It's not just a historical documentary. It reads the same way that the rise and fall of the Third Reich does. It goes back, and you get to know each actor at more than just what they did, but you got to kind of know the persons. But and what blew me away was the end notes. How many end notes are there in that thing?
More than 1,200 end notes.
Okay, so anybody that says this is not researched, I think you can debunk that pretty quick. The question is, how many man hours are we talking about to put all this together?
Well, it was, I was working a full-time job, so I was doing this nights, weekends, and early mornings. But it took, all told, with the research, the writing, the editing, and so forth, just about 5 years. Mm-hmm. And so it started with a trip to the Harry S. Truman Presidential Library in Independence, Missouri, just outside of Kansas City. And then I just followed the trail from there. And I approached it from two standpoints. And first of all, thank you so much for your very kind words, especially comparing it to the rise and fall of the Third Reich, which I read and loved as well. So for me, that's very high honor. So thank you. But I started out with two goals in mind. One was that I wanted to present this as though I were making a case for the rebirth of Israel in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. And so I needed to know that I really had my research in order. The second goal was to write it in such a way that it was readable, mm-hmm. and that people would want to keep turning the pages, which, of course, as everyone knows, is a major challenge. And to marry those two goals is an extremely difficult challenge. And so that's one of the other reasons why it took as long as it did. But I had a passion because there's so much disinformation and flat out, I'm going to just say it, it's anti-Semitism, mm-hmm. that's happening against Israel. It's against the Jewish people, but it's directed at Israel. And so, now that you've read the book, the historical background, the fact that, earlier you were talking about the need for a deal maker, someone to negotiate a deal between the Arabs and the Jews. While I agree with that, the only problem is the deal was done. It was done after World War I. That's what people don't understand, is that as part of the San Remo Conference, and that was then added into the Paris Peace Accords after World War I, the League of Nations agreed on a two-state solution. Mm-hmm. The two-state solution was done in 1921. People are talking about a two-state solution, but they're actually talking about that would be a three-state solution, because the two states that were created as part of the Paris Peace Accord in World War I was the state of Israel and the state of what was then called Transjordan,
Jordan. Mm-hmm.
which we now know as Jordan. And had the United Nations kept the original agreement that the League of Nations made, we would have avoided a whole lot of mess that we've had. But unfortunately, it was the British Empire really that caved into the pressure from the radical jihadists, and they botched the whole thing.
Yeah.
And the UN sadly went along with it.
Okay.
So at least they did do the partition deal in 1947, which turned into Israel becoming a nation in 1948. So that was a beginning, but they really caused way more headaches and problems than that they could have avoided.
Yeah, it was in spite of British cooperation more so than
exactly.
Let me ask you this, and I don't know the answer. This is spontaneous and not scripted. Is there an academic work parallel yet opposite of yours on the other side that would, if you read both of them, you could balance the two, or not?
I have not seen it. In fact, I looked for it. If it's out there, I'd love to see it, but I have not seen such a thing. And part of the problem that comes from the Arab side of the equation is that they don't tend to, in the things that I've seen, they don't tend to actually adhere to true history.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of propaganda. There's a lot of what we would call in today's nomenclature fake news. And the same thing is true as far as their archaeology. They simply don't allow themselves to look at the archaeology that has been done over the last 200 years. Anyone that looks honestly at the archaeology knows that the Jewish people have been in that land for 6,000 years. And, as a people for 3,000 years. And so there's no question that this was the promised land of the Bible. The archaeology is overwhelming, not to mention the literature and, of course, the all that is passed down, and the amazing, remarkable truth that a people who were a nation got scattered to the winds and then somehow came back together, still holding on to their traditions, their language, their religion, their culture. We've never seen anything like this in human history. It's a miracle.
Getting a little close to the finish line here, I wanted to bring up, in reading that book, apart from all the details and the personalities, the bird's eye view is I saw three things, three scenarios, each one of them extremely problematic. One scenario is that you alluded to earlier, that if only the right deal maker, the right statesman could just get these parties together and be reasonable, a deal could be struck. Well, that sounds so good. In fact, that's been attempted, and even some success. I look back on Menachem Begin. Jimmy Carter got him to shake hands and blah, blah, blah. Well, how long did he live? Well, and how did he die? And when you look at some of the details in your book, some of the more moderate statesmen on the other side, or muftis, what have you, when they alluded to any kind of cooperation, they soon found themselves, dead. So I don't have much hope in that scenario. The other scenario would be to treat that area of the world like we kind of did with Croatia, saying those people have been fighting for thousands of years. It's essentially a civil war. Just let them fight. We don't need to spill our blood. That's not going to work either, because there are resources there that we use called oil, and our economies are intrinsically linked to that, so you can't really stay neutral, and you can't be on both sides, and you can't broker a deal. That leaves one other. Pick one side and fight until the other side is subdued. Now you better pick the right side, and you better fight, but that battle, I believe, is described in the book of Revelation. Am I right?
I agree with you, yes. I think that is the ultimate scenario. The question is, how far in the future is that scenario? And so, in the meantime, the scripture tells us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And I think that we have an obligation to, obviously, spiritually speaking, the Jewish people are our brothers and sisters in the spirit. And the Bible says, Paul says that Christianity was grafted into the
Hmm.
original covenant with Israel. They are still God's people, and we need to bless Israel. And so there is an important thing there spiritually, but then also we need to recognize that as far as politically and militarily, uh, Israel is our most important ally in that part of the world. And I think we would be shocked at how much cooperation there is between our government and the Israeli government as far as intelligence and military, technology and strategy and all those kind of things. Obviously, we want to be fair, and that's one of the things that in the book that you'll see is that President Truman wanted to do the right thing for everyone involved, but you also have the buck stopping somewhere.
Hmm.
So I'm going to make a little prediction here, and we'll see how this all pulls, how this all comes out. Recently, President Trump made his proposal for a peace deal. And when I saw it, there were some Christians who felt like it was caving in and that it wasn't really anything different or anything new. But I differ with that. I believe that what he was doing was laying down the offer so that if that offer down the road, and he put a timetable there, I don't remember, it's 3 years or whatever it was, but there was a timetable for acceptance of this plan. And if the Palestinian Arabs living in on the western side of the Jordan did not accept that plan, well, then there are going to be ramifications. Here's my prediction for what those ramifications are. First of all, they're not going to accept the deal. They never have, and I don't believe that they ever will. And some people would say, "Oh my, what are you, closed-minded?" No, I know history, but
Yes, you do.
I also know a little bit of Islamic theology, and the Quran says that any land that has been conquered during jihad is Islamic land forever. Well, we know that the Muslims controlled that part of the world. They went with the same name that the Romans used when they changed it from Eretz Israel to Palestinia, Syria, Palestinia, which then became Palestine, which was named after Israel's old enemies, the Philistines, just to kind of rub their noses in their defeat. That's the kind of thing that the Romans like to do. And so later on, we know that people like Saladin and the Mamluks and then finally the Turks under the Ottoman Empire controlled that land. So if you're reading from a literalist perspective of the Quran, then you can never make peace with Israel.
Right.
And so I don't believe that they ever will want to make peace with Israel, which will then trigger these things. And I'll wrap up real quick because I know we're running out of time. And that is number one, choice will be given to the people who are there. You can either live peaceably like other Arabs who live in Israel and become Israeli citizens, or you can choose and we will help to move you to another country. You choose the country, we'll help to move you there. Or if you choose to be a terrorist, if you choose to come against our government in an illegal way, then you will either face prison or death. And then everything on the western side of the Jordan River, just like it was ratified in international law by the League of Nations, would become Israel, which is what it should have been from the beginning. And everything trans-Jordan, across the Jordan, becomes Arab Palestine, which is what we call Jordan. And I believe that that is going to be something that will probably take place under President Trump. The nations won't like it, and it could be the hook in the jaw to lead to the end times. We don't know. But then again, it could be a temporary peace to deal with the situation. in a fair way, in the way that it should have been dealt with from the beginning.
Profound. Folks, we are out of time. And Dr. von Buseck, thank you for your insights. Folks, the book I have read is I Am Cyrus. The title of the book becomes evident in the final paragraphs. But I found it very intellectually, politically, and spiritually stimulating. Thank you for your work, Dr. Craig von Buseck, and we appreciate you sharing with us tonight. And
thank you, Coach Mark. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be with you.
Appreciate it, sir. All right, folks, we went a little bit over. That's okay. What a compelling, interesting man. What a wise man. What a learned folks, that's rich. Okay. Now, at the bottom of the hour, we're going to have a different point of view. We're going to go around the cross W with J.D. Winninger. He's coming up in just a few minutes. I've got a lot of work to do between now and then, but I want you to contemplate two questions between now and then, and actually for the rest of your life. You ready? Question number one. What is the boldest thing you've ever done for Jesus Christ? Question number two. When was that? The hard part is this: let's not ever be satisfied with either answer.